Good morning. How the devil are you doing this fine day? Good to see you all present and correct. Gary Muirhead just joined this morning. Gary, hope you're fit and well. The holiday is growing ever closer, isn't it? What is it now? 2 weeks, thereabouts? Damien99, Christian Bellamy has just joined us over on Instagram as well. Mark Whiting just walked through the side door while I wasn't paying attention. Good morning to Mark. Let me press that button there. Thank you for that, Gary. I was going to mention this. Yes, last night, 6 o'clock last night, we did drop the first episode of our new show. And I was all excited about it. And then woke up this morning to find that, frankly, there's not enough news for another episode today. I said at the outset that we're going to roll with the punches. If there is news to report, we'll do an episode. If there's not news to report, we won't. Well, today we've got one item of news which I don't really think is worth doing a standalone episode for. So I'm going to carry that bit over to tomorrow and hope that the news fairies deliver upon cast gifts before us. But yeah, I must admit I was pleasantly surprised. It's the first time we've put video over on our Substack page, Demolition Insider. Didn't know how it was going to turn out. Had a good idea of how things might roll with Instagram and YouTube and Facebook, all of which performed pretty much as I expected to. But Substack turned out to be one of our biggest audiences. It went down very well. So we'll be doing it again. We will be doing it again. Let's have a look. Who else do we have here? Jim Turner. Morning, Jim. Thanks for the message on WhatsApp, and thanks for the comment on the JCB story on LinkedIn, which I've just responded to. Alfred Mercier just said, Jambo to you as well, my friend, and good morning, working through the break today, says Dan Cullen. I mean, it's a wonder you get breaks anyway. Speaking of which, today's morning monologue, which I'll tell you about in a moment. I want to talk about how this industry monitors and measures almost everything, but maybe not the bits that it should be measuring. We'll come to that. Also, I remember years ago, and I do mean some years ago, seeing a photograph of, this is completely unconnected to work, by the way, but I'm just reminiscing here. Saw a photograph of a milkman doing the rounds, basically in the Blitz-torn London. There were damaged buildings, rubble, smoke rising from a pile of what used to be a home or whatever. And there was the milkman going about his business. And it's an image that stuck with me because when you think of war, you kind of think that war is kind of all-encompassing, that, the entire world stops while war is going on, which is not the case at all. As we've seen from, the images coming out of Ukraine, Ukrainians are still going to work. They're still sending their children to school, despite what's going on. Exactly the same in Gaza. And I was reminded again last night, obviously, Mr. Trump, sorry, I was just a little sick in my mouth there saying his name. But Mr. Trump had threatened to end the Iranian civilization if they didn't meet his demands. And one of his cabinet was actually talking about the potential use of nuclear weapons. It didn't come to pass, as he so often does. He's backed down. And yet we all just went about our business yesterday. We were potentially on the brink of nuclear war, and we all just went about our business. It kind of reminds you, I realise that our news channels and our media is filled with details of what's going on in the political world. Day to day, does it really make any difference? I said this before after Trump was elected. I've met hundreds, thousands of Americans before, and I've met hundreds, thousands of Americans since. None of them are different. Just because they've got a certifiable lunatic in the White House doesn't. New Yorkers, still New Yorkers. Californians, still Californians. Texans, still Texans, mate. No bloody difference whatsoever. So the less said about all of that, the better. Ken Hatcher just walked through the door, bringing with him, as he so often does, a ray of sunshine. Speaking of Mr. Hatcher, Ken, I don't know if you made it out to the Diamond Lot at ConExpo. If you did, I'm going to take you for a trip down memory lane. If you didn't, well, I'll be showing you what you missed, because that's one of the films we've got coming up. So without further ado, let me get rid of that. Let me roll the intro and get this show underway. It seems a weird thing to be saying 2 days into the shows of this week, but it is Wednesday. I know. It's Wednesday, the 8th of April. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony, the Walrus of Demolition, the Lord High Chancellor of live streaming, and I have a certificate to prove it, and the authentic voice of the global demolition industry. I don't have a certificate to prove that. You just have to take my word for it. In today's show, Bird's Eye View optimises Liebherr excavator safety. Wacker Neuson rolls out its latest dumpers. We're going to be taking a tour of the ConExpo Diamond Lot and how Caterpillar is harnessing technology to optimise mine efficiency. Plus, in today's edition of Mark's Morning Monologue, measurement and management. That's what it's called. I'll do my best to make it all clear when we get there. Mick Norton is here. Saying good morning. Good morning to you, Mick. Thank you very much indeed for being here. And thank you for sending over the details of that Daily Mail article on JCB being the victim of political bias over its Pothole Pro. Fascinating story. I question the validity and the actual depth of it, but thank you for sending it anyway. Dan has got the sunshine as well. Sun is beaming today. Dan, as you well know, it shines upon the righteous, and as we all know, Dan Cullen is nothing if not righteous. Gary Muirhead says it's like COVID times, and when they said essential workers must go to work, but it was funny who they said the essential applies to. Yeah, even now, where are we? 6 years on. Even now, that. The decision, listen, I understand the decision. I understand the political reasoning behind the decision to make demolition and construction workers key workers, give them kind of elite status, so to allow them, to encourage them to go to work. What I find most remarkable with hindsight, I mean, I said it at the time because I was sat here doing this at the time, but what I find remarkable, even more so looking back, was as an industry, we were told, you know, that the streets of Britain are disease-ridden. There is an existential threat waiting in every breath of a person standing close by you. Do not go out of your house. Do not meet your family. Do not visit them. Do not have parties. All of the things we were told to do. And then right at the very end of all of that, all of those explanations and advisories. But if you work in demolition construction, you crack on, lads. We need you to keep the wheels of industry turning. And as an industry, we all went, all right then, that seems perfectly acceptable. We will walk the plague-ridden streets because we've got holes to dig and houses to build and demolition to take care of. Weird, right? And even with, you know, the passing of the 6 years between then and now, even now I'm looking at it thinking, and we all bought that? Were we thinking straight when we did that? Anywho, let's have a bit of Caterpillar, and then we're going to be taking to the skies, kind of, with Liebherr after this. So, site safety. Of course you do. I'm preaching to the choir here. Site safety. We kind of need eyes in the back of our head, just in case the apprentice decides to creep up on our blind side, or, there's a hole or a void that nobody spotted. We need eyes in the back of our head. They also quite handy if the eyes are in the top of your head as well. On that subject, we've got this from Gary. He says, I wonder if that's standard or optional. My guess is going to be optional. The camera systems normally are. Chris Ford has just arrived. Morning. Is it Friday yet? This week is not going well. Sad to say, Chris, you've got another couple of days before you make it to Friday. Gary, going back to talk about COVID and stuff. I remember the picture you're talking about because there was a real juxtaposition, which I'll come to. But Gary says, I remember seeing pictures of the canteen at Hinkley Point, jam-packed with workers, bloody joke. Well, I saw that while I was in Vegas and everything kicked off in March 2020. Mate of mine, guy that's been on the show, Mike Keogh, he of the demolition expertise, car park expertise, he sent me a photograph. He was traveling from London, Victoria, up to his native, the Wirral, up Liverpool way. And he was at London Victoria Station. And he took a photograph, 5 o'clock in the evening, and London Victoria Station, there was about 4 people in it. And yet I came back, sensing the worst and shut down imminent and everything else, or lockdown imminent. And there, as I say, a couple of days later, saw a photograph from Hinkley Point, jam-packed with workers. There were face masks about, but by and large, they were all side by side, working in very close proximity or eating in very close proximity. And yet we all just went, oh, okay then. Yeah, that. Where was our representation then? I'm not going to go down the line of talking about unions because I have my own feelings on that. But the Construction Leadership Council, the people that lead, where were they when we needed them? Why weren't they saying to the government, go to work amidst a plague? You're having, as they say down my part of the world, you're having a giraffe, sir. No, they didn't. They offered advice on how to go to work in the midst of a plague. So thanks for that, CLC. Jim Turner, going back to the war that almost got worse, didn't get worse, hasn't actually changed anything. Jim has this. I'm predicting this small halt in the game will last just long enough to alter the share prices. Then it will kick off again for another fortnight, then finish just after the end of April. Both sides will have made enough money out of the region by then, and all eyes will turn back to Russia and Ukraine for their summer season. You do make it sound like a run of a West End play, but I'm not going to argue with you because it does. I mean, listen, it's been widely reported the shifts in share prices ahead of an attack, or the announcement of a ceasefire, or the announcement of an escalation in hostilities always seems to be preceded by a slight twitch in the share price. There's more to this than meets the eye. This isn't just Donald Trump being mad, although he clearly fucking is. It's not just that. There is calculation behind the lunacy. Mark my words, or more specifically, mark Jim's words. He's absolutely on the money. Let's have a bit of this.
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting the show. You can leave us a tip at buymeacoffee.com/demolition news.
We've got a trip around the Diamond Lot of ConExpo, which is about 7 minutes long. Not now, but in a few minutes' time. So before we do a longer film, I thought I'd do a shorter film. Wacker Neuson have upgraded their site dumper range, and they look like this.
The Wacker Neuson wheel dumpers DW10 and DW15 impress with safer, stronger performance than ever before, and modern operating comfort. The layout is clear, intuitive, and timeless, while safety around the machine is ensured by bright signal colors, optimal all-round visibility, and easy-to-reach handholds. Thanks to their compact design, these dumpers fit into the tightest spaces, and their powerful performance ensures they master demanding tasks effortlessly. The proven operating concept allows for comfortable, one-handed operation, and an optional heated seat ensures a pleasant working environment, even on cold days. Test the DW10 and DW15 now at your local dealer.
Very smart indeed. As I said, we're off back to ConExpo. I've done these things out of sequence. There may be more ConExpo coverage to come. There's certainly some of our profiles on some of the companies there that we still need to present to you. But we're going around the Diamond Lot in a moment, and I'll explain more after this.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
So the big names of ConExpo were largely gathered in the festival grounds. Caterpillar were there, Volvo were there, Liebherr were there, Demolition, Linkbelt, Belco, XCMG. They were all in the festival grounds. But there was another outside area called the Diamond Lot, just next door to the West Hall. And we're going to take you for a tour around that. Now, I'm going to apologise slightly in advance. I've done my very best to minimise the wind noise, but it was a really blowy day that I filmed this. I think I've largely killed it. There will be a few gusts along the way. For that, I apologise. But this is the Diamond Lot. Okay, it's our final day at ConExpo. It's also the final area to visit. This is the Diamond Lot we're walking into now. I wouldn't go so far as to say it's the also-rans. That would be unfair. But these are the bits that didn't make it into the main festival ground. So I'm going to spin the camera around and we'll go and take a look. I'm sure I mentioned it before, but Americans do wear their flag with pride. Everything that's American made, as you can see there, made in USA, everything is absolutely highlighted. I'll try and do this in some semblance of order. There's one I do need to highlight in the background here. We're coming up to SDLG, another of those Chinese manufacturers. I'm not sure what SDLG stands for, but as you can see, another full range of equipment. I have to say, I do like the green colour scheme. I think that's their electric product range. So that is their 959H. If we go around here, this is a 956 HEV. This is an electric machine. Very nicely finished, I have to say. Through to their excavators in the background here. There is another electric machine to be seen here. 938 HEV. Like the variation on the colour scheme. And there's the electric mini excavator as well. We'll walk past their actual booth, which I'll show you just a second. There we are.
Shinehill Global Construction Machinery Company Limited is the LG, founded in 1972, is the top 50 construction machinery manufacturer in the world and a member of Volvo Group. The company's main products are excavators, wheel loaders, field loaders, backhoe loaders, graders, and rollers.
If we come over here, the colour scheme is a clue. We've got a couple of trucks which are apparently electric powered. The MTE 160H off-highway dump truck, 44 tonner. More traditionally powered AT40, the articulated. If we swing around here, apologies for the wind noise. Not as bad as it was yesterday, but it's still there. There you are, the RTH 100. Not a product I know particularly well, but there it is. All electric truck. Let's take a stroll out of here. They're also active in the access platform sector as well. A quick left here.
Well, day one was hot. Yeah.
Well, that ripper helped them.
Another name that might be familiar to viewers of the Breakfast Show, that's Everrun. They're over here as well. Telehandlers, little wheel loaders as well. First green, more electric. Been quite noticeable at this show actually. I was talking about this earlier with somebody. This time 3 years ago, electric was very much the thing. Everybody had to have electric, everyone was talking about electric. There's been much less of it this time. And I've not actually seen any real reference, not noticeable anyway, any real reference to anything to do with hydrogen. I wonder if they were a bit too premature when they launched it in the first place, but we shall see, Let's have a look. I don't know how well you can see it, but that white building in the background there, that is the new Fontainebleau Hotel. It's one of the newest hotels on the Las Vegas Strip. Not that we're going there, but that gives you an idea. Bit of access action. Now here is a company that I am very interested in. That's Built Robotics, who we featured them on the show before, but they do precisely that. They do robotics to robotise equipment. Not sure what the truck's doing up there, but apparently that seemed like a good idea to somebody. And we're over to Bad Dog Tools apparently. That's the end of the West Hall of the Las Vegas Convention Centre. Not too sure what more I can show you around here. Let me take a very quick spin down this end because I don't think we've covered this properly. Now, rhinoceros, we featured those on the Breakfast Show. More a case of who we haven't focused, to be honest. There we are. That is rhinoceros in all its glory, past their forklifts, which I'm not even remotely interested in. through to the dumpers and the mini excavators and the skid steers and track carriers as well. And a little track mounted mixer. And wake our way through. Big Cat 340 with a piling rig attached. And I think that pretty much brings us to the end of this tour of the Diamond Lot. Now, just very quickly, and this goes to show how badly my brain works. If I'd carried on down that a little bit further, I would have come across a company called Strauss, a workwear company. I said last week that I was going to give away a Strauss t-shirt, and I am, but not today. I don't know how well you can see it, but I've got one of these up for grabs. It's got Strauss written on it. I'm not going to get it out of the bag because I want it to be nice and fresh for whoever wins it. I'll be doing that tomorrow, and my apologies for not having it done already because I'm an idiot and I have no memory whatsoever. We'll be doing that tomorrow. So if you are around, you're in with a chance of winning a t-shirt. I think I'm fairly sure I've got a large one and I've got an extra large. So we'll put one up for grabs. I'll keep the other one. I'd rather keep the large because I'm looking a bit trimmer these days. But we shall see. Dan said, did you see the robots in Selfridges in London at the weekend? I don't know if I did. I'll check back on the WhatsApp group, but thank you for that, Dan. And there's Ken saying nice. Yeah, it was very nice. You did it the right way around, I think, Ken. You went there on the first day when it was nice and sunny and lovely and warm. I went there on the day where it was blowing a gale. Didn't spoil the film too much, I hope. One more film to show you, and we'll be doing that after this. Let's have a look. Ken says, I nearly bought a t-shirt on there. I nearly bought a t-shirt, but they very kindly gave me a couple. But I must admit, the bit that did it for me, they've got some boots. Strauss do boots, and they're like Red Wing boots, if anyone's familiar with Red Wing boots, but about half the price. And they're very, very nice as well. Jim Turner says, is it in fat bastard size, or is it one for the missus? I've got a large and an extra large. I'm sure the large would be way too big for your other half. I'm not entirely sure the extra large would be big enough for you. And I'm not saying you're fat, Jim. I'm just saying you're a big fella. But feel free to enter anyway. And, maybe use it as a rag or something like that. This companion robotics thing is an awful idea, says Dan. No human interaction is not good. On a number of levels, I would say, not least of which the social interaction, I would say. We'll come to all of that at some point. Now, I want to show you the final film of today for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, it's a Caterpillar film. We love Caterpillar films. We love their tech. We love their movies. But there's an additional reason to show it to you today. My morning monologue today is about how, as an industry, we are now in the habit of monitoring and measuring everything. Down to the last milliliter of fuel, we measure that. We measure how much steel we take out of a job. We monitor how many bricks we put into a job. We monitor vibration levels and dust emissions and noise emissions. We measure everything. That's the subject of today's morning monologue. And with that being said, here's Caterpillar using technology as part of that measuring process.
Early on, when we went to Job Site Solutions, we asked a lot of them. We asked them to send us raw data files on a daily basis, and they help analyze that data as well. They've been essential in working through that and also reminding us along the way, like, I know you guys are really busy, but you're not collecting cycle data on this machine. And so they've been integral in pushing that, and we've put that on them. We've told them, look, we have enough going on. We expect you to do this for us, and they've delivered on that.
CAT Job Site Solutions was created to help customers solve unique problems. They kind of take stock parts and make custom solutions. And they're able to leverage a variety of tools, whether it be through financing, whether it be production, whether it be through various safety technologies. They can pull together a solution that is focused on the customer-specific issue.
CIMEX utilizes MineStar Technologies and JSS to monitor their equipment. They have people from Caterpillar that help them express data that they can observe, and they're able to make plans for the future using that data so that they can maintain and keep their equipment running and productive. Pulling in some of that data that MineStar is able to track definitely was a huge factor in upgrading these trucks.
CAT JSS guys would come in and we go over the protocol, how the production was doing, how crucial it was to load the trucks and how fast and efficient everything was running. The meetings were very important with the operation. That way we can tell what loaders are putting out more production, what shift is doing more.
Everybody was on board, and the results are there to prove it. It's very rare that a customer is 100% Caterpillar on site. And CIMEX realized that there was only one company or one partner that could help them reach their goals, and that was Holtcat and Caterpillar. And I don't think anybody else could have done that.
From a job site solution standpoint, it's been a multi-year engagement, and it's really a strategic partnership. The big advantage there is that you have job site solutions trying to get the maximum productivity and make recommendations where necessary. Those recommendations might not be adopted by CIMEX, but in a true partnership fashion, we still want to make suggestions that could really improve the operational efficiency of the quarry.
What makes me the most proud is seeing how far we've come from where we came from was, I guess you'd call dinosaur age, modern day technology. It's an era I didn't think I'd ever see out here, but I'm proud to be part of it.
Hold that thought, because we'll be talking more about that in just a moment. But that pretty much wraps up the main part of this morning's show. I'm going to roll the outro in just a second before leaping gazelle-like over into my morning monologue. If you can't stick around for that, please stay safe. Look after yourself, your family, your friends, and your colleagues. I hope to see you again very soon. I'll be back tomorrow at 10 a.m. But if you do have the time and the inclination, I'll be back. Hang on a minute, something in the chat. Let me just have a quick look at that. Peter McKenna just said morning or good morning. And Dan Cullen offering some reassurance. Jim's not fat, he's heavy boned. Yes, indeed, he is. Right, morning monologue incoming. In the modern world of demolition and construction, one mantra reigns supreme. If it can't be measured, it can't be managed. It's the pulse of every site, the backbone of every tender, and the framework upon which our entire industry is built. We are a sector obsessed with the quantifiable. From the moment a project is a mere twinkle in a developer's eye, the measuring tapes and the spreadsheets are out. We live by the metric and we breathe the data point. Consider the life cycle of a standard demolition project. Long before the first high-reach excavator arrives, the measure and manage machine is in full swing. Estimators calculate the precise number of bricks to be reclaimed, the tonnage of steel that might be salvaged, and the exact volume of reinforced concrete to be crushed. Project managers determine the necessary headcount, specific plant machinery, and the litres of fuel required to keep the site humming. We measure the excuse me. We measure the success rate of our bids, the accuracy of our pre-contract estimates, and the real-time productivity of every bucket load. In the modern age, this digital scrutiny has reached fever pitch. We now measure what was once invisible. Sensors on the site boundary beam real-time data to stakeholders, tracking decibels, vibration levels, and particulate matter. We monitor the carbon footprint of our supply chains and the social value we bring to local communities. At the end of the fiscal year, we hold up our balance sheets, measuring our growth against last year's performance and our standing against our fiercest rivals. We are the masters of the measurable. But are we measuring the things that actually matter the most? While we track the wear and tear on an excavator's undercarriage, how often do we truly measure the physical toll on human beings operating them? Our industry is one of the most physically demanding on the planet. We acknowledge the risk of accidents, but we rarely quantify the slow, grinding erosion of the human body. The degradation of a worker isn't as easy to track as telematics. The degradation of a worker isn't as easy to track as a telematics report on a dozer. We see the success of a project delivered on time, but we ignore the long-term impact of repetitive strain, the cumulative effect of inhaling permissible dust over 20 years, or the cardiovascular cost of extreme failure, or the cardiovascular cost of extreme fatigue. We manage maintenance schedules to eliminate unplanned downtime on our equipment, yet the workforce is often expected to simply power through until they break. By failing to measure the baseline health of our staff, we're failing to manage the industry's most valuable asset. If we can't measure the physical half-life of a ground worker or a top man, how can we claim to manage our human resources with any degree of integrity? Fatigue is probably the most dangerous unmanaged variable in our entire industry. It's a debilitating force that affects cognitive function, reaction times, and emotional regulation. We wouldn't dream of operating a machine with a faulty hydraulic system, yet we regularly manage sites staffed by men and women who are mentally redlining due to exhaustion. But perhaps the most glaring omission in our industry-wide audit is the impact on the home front. Demolition and construction are, by their nature, nomadic professions. Projects are often far from home, requiring workers to live in digs, caravans, or hotel rooms for weeks, months, or even years at a time. What is the measurement of a missed bedtime? What is the measurement of a missed bedtime story for a child? What is the metric for the strain placed on a marriage by perpetual absence, or the impact on children who see their fathers only at the weekend? We talk about social value in our tenders, but we ignore the social deficit we create in the families of our own employees. The spouses, partners, and children of our workforce are the silent, The spouses, partners, and children of our workforce are the silent, underserved stakeholders of every single project. Their well-being is intrinsically linked to the success of the industry, yet their struggles remain entirely uncalculated. And until we acknowledge and account for the domestic toll, our management of the workforce will remain fundamentally flawed. It's time for the industry to broaden its definition of a metric. If we can track the fuel consumption of a generator to the second decimal point, we can surely find ways to monitor the holistic health of our people. A worker at the end of the day who is physically fit, mentally resilient, and supported at home is, by every measurable standard, more productive, more safety conscious, and more loyal. Our current balance sheet is incomplete. We're tracking the concrete, the steel, the carbon, and the cash, but we're losing sight of the flesh and blood. We're managing the project, but neglecting the people that make it happen. If we truly want this industry to be fit for the future, we need to apply an analytical rigor to the human element. We need to stop treating the health, minds, and families of our workers as an afterthought and start treating them as a core KPI. We need to acknowledge that the silence of a struggling worker is a data point in itself, one that indicates a failure of management. We've got the tools, we've got the technology. We just need to remember that the most critical components on any site don't have serial numbers. They have names, families, and they have breaking points. It's time to bring the same level of scrutiny to our people as we do to our equipment, because in the end, that mantra remains true. If it can't be measured, it can't be managed. So, there you are. There's my thought for the day. What I find strange, and I will go over to the chat in a second, I say I find it strange. I don't find it strange. I just find it frustrating. We have things like wearable devices. So you can have a bit. I've got it here. A bit like my Apple Watch. You can bung one of those on your wrist. If you're working with power tools and that kind of thing, they will monitor for exposure to hand-arm vibration. And when you've reached your limit, there's a little bleep that says you need to stop, go and do something else. You get the notification, your boss gets the notification, and you go and find some way to spend your time. We have that technology, but that technology is only applied with something for which the employer might potentially be prosecuted at some point in the future. But where is our monitoring of tiredness, of illness, of mental health, of physical strain, of damaged knees, damaged ankles, damaged hips, bad backs? Where is all of that? Because it's not measured, because it's convenient not to measure it, because probably we don't want to know the answer, but also nobody's ever been prosecuted, as far as I'm aware, for giving somebody dodgy knees for getting in and out of excavators day in, day out. Let's hop over to the chat, see what you're all saying over there, and I can get my mouse to work. Here we go. What do we got here? Peter says 13.5% drop in the price of a barrel of oil could take up to 3 weeks for it to be noticeable. UK fuel will UK fuel actually drop back down in price, or will retailers be greedy? Peter, I think you already know the answer to that question. The retailers will be greedy. They will hang on to that increase for as long as they can, unless the government intervenes and tells them to stop doing so. Peter says, wow, love this monologue. Thank you, Peter. Listen, it's only reflecting those things what you are saying, as you said here. Driver oil can be scaled to include plant operators. This is Peter's campaign to make life better for HGV drivers. But yes, it could and possibly should be extended. Nail on the head springs to mind. One of the pieces I did for our new show, the report last night, was talking about 49% of those surveyed within the construction industry reported that they have seen projects delayed through a lack of skilled people. And I think when you see headlines like that, the temptation is to believe that that's down to a recruitment thing. It's a thing where we've not got enough people coming in through schools, colleges, universities, and academies and that kind of thing, which is partly true. That is partly true. But the other side of that coin is the fact that we don't have enough strength in depth. In other words, if you've got, I don't know, a house building project, and you've got an excavator on site, and you've got an operator who has been with you for years, he's dead reliable, he's very, very thorough, very, very safe, very, very efficient, but he goes off sick or he's on holiday, who is there to replace him? When you apply that same logic to equipment, one of the reasons that we're now so keyed into things like telematics and remote monitoring is to prevent downtime by spotting issues early. Oil sampling, for example, might show a bit of wear material in your oil sample that says, oh, you're about to throw a piston or whatever it might be. There's something wrong in your hydraulic system, your motor's about to pack up, or whatever it might be. And somebody somewhere will analyze that and say, before you go any further, you need to rectify that, because if you don't, within the next 100 hours, there's going to be a loud bang on your site and your excavator ain't working anymore. That same logic applies to people. You monitor their physical and their mental health. You might identify somebody who's got, I don't know, let's say an irregular heartbeat. Not a major deal. You can pop a few pills, it'll make you right as ninepence in 5 minutes flat, you'll be fine. Or you could choose to ignore it, and then wonder why you can't complete the job because your operator's just had a massive heart attack. It's the same set of rules. And yet we don't. The other thing as well, and I'll throw over to Peter very quickly. Just a month, got 107 regular users on DriveWell. Fair play. Fair play indeed. That's a decent number. It's a fantastic start. There is this strange belief that companies tend to go where the money is. And it's tempting to look at something like an excavator. I know we've got Gary's getting the new EC500 up to his site in the next few weeks or thereabouts. What is an EC500? I genuinely don't know, but let's say it's, by the time you've tricked it out and everything else, let's say it's £250,000. I don't know. Just work with those figures. It doesn't matter whether they're accurate. Let's say it's £250,000. And it will, as I say, it will be tricked out. They'll feed it the finest of fuels and they'll stroke it gently with the finest lubricants and everything else to make sure that they get optimum value out of their 250 grand investment. If an employee remains with the same company for 20, 30 years, by the time you factored in wages and holiday pay, and potentially sick pay, and pensions and national insurance and everything else, over the course of a 20, 30-year career, you will have invested £1 million on that person. So you spend £250,000 on a machine and you treat it like it's made of bone china, but you're going to spend £1 million on the guy that's driving it, and you take no care of his physical well-being or his mental well-being whatsoever. Even setting aside the mercenary nature of our industry and the way that we're basically a meat grinder for people, that makes no mathematical or economic sense. And the fact that the industry doesn't identify that and hasn't realized that blows my mind. As I said in that morning monologue, we monitor everything. We measure everything. We compare and contrast everything. We know down to the last milliliter how much fuel a machine is going to work, how much it's going to use per hour, per day, per project. We know down to the last final detail, down to 2 decimal places. Our people. How is Bob's health today? Oh, I don't know. I haven't asked him. Really? Bob is Bob on a house building site or in a quarry or on a demolition site is potentially the linchpin of that entire operation. You think about a demolition operation, you'll sometimes have a high reach excavator, maybe 1 or 2 other machines around tidying up as he goes. And the high reach operator is highly skilled, trained on that machine, qualified on that machine, has usually got a huge amount of experience with that machine. If he goes off sick for something that should have been identified months ago, who gets to drive the machine then? Do you have someone on standby? Do you make do with somebody that's not as good, not as experienced, not as qualified? Or does that machine stand idle? Either way, you are likely to be losing production just because you didn't bother to do the regular maintenance on Bob. Jim says they haven't invested in a person, they've hired a person. A machine is a saleable item when they've done with it. All true, but 4 times the value. 4 times the value. And while I take, I absolutely accept every single word that Jim has just said there. You have invested in a machine. But as we stand right here today on the 8th of April, 2026, that machine, that excavator, that dozer, wheel loader, scraper, grader, whatever it is, that machine is a useless pile of steel. It is utterly, utterly useless. It serves no purpose whatsoever until you take that hired person and stick him behind the levers. Because without that person, let's make it nice and straightforward. Imagine Gary takes delivery of his new EC500 and Volvo or SMT or whoever decide, just for a giggle, just for shits and giggles, we're going to deliver it without an engine. Doesn't do anything, does it? Well, same thing applies. If something, God forbid, were to happen to Gary, if he was to take some time off sick, was taken ill, had an injury or whatever it might be, that prevented him from getting behind the levers of that machine basically is a really, really big paperweight. That's all it is. Wolfie is back in our midst. Good morning, Wolf Elder 69. Good morning, Mark. I've been busy. No need to apologise. Moved out on my own, and I'm trying to get a quarry job. Well, fair play to you, my friend. Fair play to you. And at the same time, you've arrived from the United States of America. We've got Nacho Reyes, number one. I think that's number one, who's just said, Saludos desde Colombia. I wish I had more Spanish about me, but good. Yeah. Buenos dias, Colombia. Buenos dias, Nacho Reyes. Colombia. Yeah. We've got people watching from Colombia. I wish I could speak more Spanish, my friend, but thank you for being here. But you can't sell the employee or get a massive transfer fee after you've trained them. All true. All true. But... Jim, I get a funny feeling this is going to end up being a game of tennis between you and I. And you've just, it's 30-15 to you at the moment. However, I'm going to play a big backhand down the baseline with this. If you look after that hired person, that employee, you look after them, you treat them well, you look after their mental and their physical well-being, the chances are you don't need a transfer fee. You don't need to sell them because you have been loyal to them. They are loyal to you. They are in tune with your working practices. They understand the machine that they're on, and everything goes along swimmingly. 30 all. Jim, back to you. It's your serve. But listen, it's all true. It's all true. But if you were to look after the mental, physical, spiritual well-being of your employee, they will give as much in return. Look at, I mean, I can do this from a demolition perspective. You look at the companies that do the job properly, the likes of Armac and AR. They've got people driving their equipment that have been with them 20, 30 years. There's a reason for that. There's a reason for that. Yes, pay will come into it, but the absolute truth is they feel like they're being cared for, and as a result, they care for their employee. They care for the machine they're driving. AR is a prime example. All of their machines have got the nickname or the name of the operator on them, and they take a pride in that. And that pride goes back up the line. The company has put faith in them, and they repay that in the way that they operate, the way they look after their machines, and so on. But the transfer fee system will be a good business model for bringing new starters on and then farming them out to bigger firms. Wow, listen, stranger things have happened. And in absolute truth, I mean, I do wonder about that. I know you're saying this is about as a kind of vision for the future, but to a degree, that kind of happens. I've not seen him in the chat over on LinkedIn today. But you think about somebody like Paul McHale, who's a very well-respected high-reach excavator operator. And he has taken his skills to New Zealand. I think he was in the Falklands for a little while and places like that. Because I wouldn't say there was necessarily a transfer fee, but there was certainly a transferable skill. And he's not moving to the Falkland Islands for 6 months for the good of his health. He's doing it because they're paying him very, very handsomely as a result. It is a transferable thing, not a transfer fee as we'd understand it with a football player, perhaps, but there's a transfer benefit if you do the job properly. Wolfie says, I couldn't have put it better myself, Mark. You care for your employees, they care for your company. Yeah. I saw a thing today, which is not particularly allied, but it did make me think. Somebody was talking about the most patriotic thing you can do is to pay your taxes. I'll leave you to argue that amongst yourselves, but basically the premise was, if you care for your country will care for you. I think we've got lots of evidence that is not necessarily the case. Lots of evidence, overwhelming evidence. But I do think when you apply that down at a local level with an employee level, if an employer looks after you, if you need a day off, they don't kick up a stink about it. You need to spend a bit of time with your sick wife or do your daughter's dance recital or whatever it might be. You get your paid holiday, you get the occasional bonus for jobs well done. You are more inclined to stay with them, to be loyal to them, to look after them, look after their machines, make sure that nothing's being, we were talking about theft yesterday, nothing's going out the back door and that kind of thing. It's a two-way street, or should be. Keeping staff is easy. Pay them more than anyone else and trust them. Yeah, the problem with that paying more than anyone else, which is a valid argument, the problem with that is it's a constantly moving goalpost. If you've got somebody you really like and you're paying them £25 an hour because they're really good and you want to keep them, there will be someone to offer them £26 an hour. And even if you then say, well, we don't want you to go, we'll pay you £26.50, sooner or later, someone will offer them 27 or 28 quid. And even if you then rise to that, someone will offer them 30. It's a constant moving goalpost. That's all I ask, and not be any further than 45 minutes from home. Yeah, absolutely. Goes back to what I was saying in the morning monologue. I think if you can do that as an employee, but also if your employer can take that into account, and I don't think there should be a bias as such within the workforce. But, if you've got an operator who's newly married, just had kids, maybe think about not sending them from London to the Hebrides or from Glasgow to Cornwall. Maybe try and keep those guys a bit closer to home, and the ones that have got a few miles under their belt, maybe send them away. A bit of, I never forget this. NDTG, National Demolition Training Group, had a couple of guys that were doing some training, and they asked one guy to travel from Cornwall to Manchester on the same day that they asked somebody else to travel from Birmingham to Cornwall. Both doing basically the same course, both doing the same training for the same people, but they'd sent one from the bottom of the country to the top, and they sent another one from the middle of the country to the bottom, when they could have just looked at the spreadsheet and gone, well, he can be there in 5 minutes, he can be there in 15 minutes. No. How often do we do that in this industry? You think about the logistics that goes into moving equipment, particularly when you're talking about the bigger machines, the bigger wheel loaders, the bigger dozers, high-reach excavators, where you need road permissions and possibly escorts and that kind of thing. All of that planning that goes into that. Does anyone ever stop to think, well, your man here, he's just come back from 2 weeks, his wife's just had a baby, and we're sending him from London to Glasgow. Is that really the best use of our assets? Or could we do that a different way? Anywho, people, that is all bar the shouting. That is an hour of your time that you're never, ever going to get back. And for that, I can only apologise. I'll be back tomorrow for yet more of the same. I wish I could predict what I'm going to be talking about. I've got no idea. I make this stuff up as I go along, as you can probably tell by now. I'll be back 10 a.m. for tomorrow for yet more of the same. Until then, everybody, have a good day. Enjoy the sunshine. Keep yourselves hydrated. Keep the sun off the back of your neck. We don't want anyone going big down as a result of sunstroke. I realise it's early doors for sunstroke, but you never know. I'll be back tomorrow, 10 a.m. for more of the same. Until then, have a fine and splendid day. Thank you for your company, and I'll see you soon.